One of many lovely things about the Yorkshire Dales which I'd forgotten over the years was just how pretty it can be in the run-up to Christmas. Another thing I'd forgotten was that occasionally things can take on quite a different character. The UK is no stranger to high winds, of course, but this was Storm Debbie and it was really quite violent. We were supposed to be having gusts of about 65 miles an hour, but I think we may have been scoring a bit higher than that. It felt more like 80 miles an hour at times. You know, those kind of winds where you feel like the weather isn't joking around anymore. Anyway, despite all the winds and rain, I was able to use the time constructively and get the Krakatoa suite all finished, which was great. All 3 parts of that are now out on the major streaming services if you want to have a listen. In the intervening time I did another stint at Scargill, which was lovely. I was to have done an additional one in, I think it was October, but I caught some cold or the other that was going around and that kind of knocked me flat for a bit. However, I'm going back there again in the new year and very much looking forward to doing so. In a moment I'd like to talk about my stargazing activities, but first there are a couple of little things I'd like to cover. Well, tonight I'm just grateful it isn't last night because it was about -7 outside. The reason I say that is because we've got another power cut. We seem to get those not regularly but at intervals in this area, and they don't just last half an hour or so, they tend to go on most of the night. So I kind of I've adapted to that because I've already had a gas stove and a few other bits and bobs with me. We used to get power cuts a bit in Norfolk, but not long ones like this. Apart from day-to-day weather up here, there's also been quite a bit going on in the atmosphere generally, and I'll come to that in a moment. But first, I'd like to show you something else that happened recently. Yes, new mice. As I've observed in the past, they don't live terribly long, so periodically one has to get new ones. But it's always fascinating watching the new intake trying to figure out the running wheel. Clearly this little one thinks that she's somehow controlling everything, until that is one of the others lands on her head. Okay then, let's talk about the Northern Lights. When I did my last video, I hadn't yet had a close encounter with the Northern Lights in Yorkshire, but that changed very quickly. I think probably of all the pictures I took, my favourite would be this first one. There were good indications that we were going to have quite a strong magnetic storm, and sure enough, when dusk fell, this appeared above the houses over the road. Now, the Northern Lights take place at very high altitudes, at least 60 miles, and sometimes as high as 300 miles above the surface of the Earth. Depending on what latitude you're at, it can mean that the lights will be visible all over the sky. Now, up to this point, my experience of the aurora had been in Norway, where you very often see colour and movement as well. But down in the United Kingdom, especially further south in the United Kingdom, it's a little different. You very often have to rely on your camera to give you a clear view of what you're looking at. In a moment I'll show you a little bit of time-lapse footage I took. From that you can get a clearer idea what to expect when viewing with the naked eye. A few weeks after the bonfire night aurora that we saw, we got lucky again, and I picked up some nice pictures taken literally half a mile down the road from my front door. I could have just stood in the front yard and taken pictures, but I wanted to get a slightly different foreground. This is the time-lapse footage I was talking about. It's not great because it's done at rather low resolution, but you can see a kind of greenish reddish tinge on the horizon. The 1st of December display went on into the small hours, but don't get excited, that's not a UFO, it's just an aeroplane caught in the time-lapse. Earlier in the evening I also got this one of the reddish blush that you can see behind the clouds. Well, at the time of recording it continues to blow a gale outside, so it's the perfect opportunity to shut myself away in the studio and work on something I've been asked to do. I'm producing a backing track, a beat for a singer, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where that goes because it's not something I've ever tackled before. Well, that about wraps it up for this video and indeed this year, so it only remains for me to say thank you for watching, thank you very much for your support this year, and however you spend the next few days, take care and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.